Now, let's think about this. This class is Introduction to Microeconomics. So, we think about what is economics and what kind of question we are dealing with during this semester. How we can deal with it. But under the economics, we think about it. But this class is Introduction to Microeconomics. And what else? Economics itself is divided with two parts, micro and macro. Micro, microscope, very small things, the nuance of word you need to think of. Macro, macro is bigger one, right? Micro, macro. And microeconomics and macroeconomics, we can divide by economics in general, big two part. One is micro, one is macro. Micro is a small, microscopic, and macro, bigger one. So we can separate or think or categorize with the micro characteristic and macro characteristic. What we are going to deal with in microeconomics and what kind of topic is belonging to the macroeconomics, we need to think this time. Microeconomics focuses on the causes and consequences of the choices individuals make in the market economy. Well, in other words, microeconomics means economic agent, we're saying, consumer, producer, sometimes government, make a decision, and that decision, what kind of cause and effect, cause and consequence. So, every individual in the economy make a decision, what is the impact of it? That is dealing with the microeconomics. So, microeconomics focuses on the causes and consequences of the choice individual make. Individual, small, one by one. So that is belonging to the microeconomics. And macroeconomics is bigger size. We dealing with the macroeconomics as a whole country. Well, macroeconomics, simply we can see the variable we are looking at is GDP, inflation, or price level. GDP is as a whole country produced within a certain time period, within a year, how much value is created in the country. So the size itself, we are now looking at the individual level of transactions or their activities or their choice. But this one is aggregate value, we are looking at it. So macro policies is dealing with GDP, price level, employment, unemployment, interest rate. Those things are macroeconomic topic. We're looking at the economy as a whole, as a bigger sense. So in the bigger pictures, how we can make a GDP grow all the time. So how do we grow economy and avoiding the economic recessions, how to prevent or reducing the inflations, those things, right? So that is a macro topic, but under this semester we are not dealing with the macro topic, we are dealing with the micro topic. Individual level, decision making process, and cause and effect out of it. So under that, as your daily life, as yourself, what kind of thing is constraint or blocking or restrain your choices is one thing we can think of. As an individual consumer, what is limit of make different solutions, different choice? And how do people react or respond? One make a decision for certain situation and what is your reaction? What is the best response? And that limitation or restraint is removed. What are you going to do? And after all, that kind of decision or that kind of consequence is promising. Is that good one? Good one for you, good one for society, good one for community as a whole. Those things we need to think about it. Individual decision-making process. In this case, individual consumer, which is generally us, we consume goods and services all the time during our daily life. What kind of consumption decision we're making? Should we buy this? Should we sell this? Should we buy this? Those decisions. And I sell this and then buy that. And on how many times should I walk? How many hours should we work? So labor supply, in other words, in economic jargon. So those decisions we're going to think during this semester under microeconomics field. So we're dealing with the microeconomics out of economics one part. Usually it is depending on the schools. Some schools start with the macro first, but some schools start with the micro first. Yeah, when I was in Sungkyunkwan University, we start with the microeconomics first, and we learn the micro first. And even, introduction level, micro first semester and second semester as the macro, we learn it. I don't know either way which one is better. There is pro and cons about it. But some scholars or professor prefer to teach macro first. But myself, for me, micro first and macro next is a better idea. Because the first several chapter is covered applied micro more relative to the macro part. It isn't necessary to the micro and macro at the same time, but first the 4 chapters, we're building the good foundation of economics in general, but it is more applied to the micro relative to the macro. Next, we are thinking about science. Economics is a science. Is economics a science? Under what sense we can say it is a science? We define as economics is a social science. How so? So economics seeks to explain real-world events by way of certain process. What kind of process? Observation, hypothesis, prediction, experimentation, and conclusion. Well, it's several steps, right? But let me explain this. So daily life, we live life. We observe something. We just saw things and we wondered, how is that happen? What is the reason that kind of thing is going on? So we observe. Observation is first. We observe certain thing is happening in real world. And we think about it. Why does that happen? What caused that scene, issues, problems? And we try to explain it. And if you're smart enough, you can make a theory out of it. Hypothesis. So I think that's happening because of this. That's hypothesis. So a little bit of developing hypothesis can be say theory. Using the model, economic model in general, we are dealing with economics, so making a hypothesis and test out of it. And we can make a prediction or forecasting. Well, this is happening because of this, and it will cause another effect later. So that predictions, what's happened next, and what is the consequence out of this? We can analyze it. And then, is that right? Yeah, that's only theory. So you just think about it. Yeah, mental experimentation. So by doing so, we need to prove that your solution or your idea is correct or not. Your prediction is right or wrong. Then what we are going to do? Experimentation. Sometimes, in general, in economics, experimentation is not easy to do. Why so? It is really hard. It's a human being. You can just testing out human beings doing this. Like giving out $10 and what you are going to do, we observe it, but it is easily ruined under the certain setup. Somebody who is coming out from the low income family, $10 meaning way different than somebody who is coming out from the high income family. Or your high income group, low income group, $10 meanings or approach and their way of thinking can be different. We cannot control every single point of that. And somebody even who is coming out from the low income group, he just or she just think that very generous about $10, even though it is just so necessary in their lives, but they just pay out to the poor or donate it. Oh yeah, $10, we just get it for free. Then why don't we just give out this? So totally different outcome is coming out from the circumstance. So it is not easy to experiment, not like natural science. But nowadays, one of the economics field is very heated, which is behavioral economics. That is inspired by psychology and doing some experiment and prove old economic theories or axioms or somebody who believe as a principles, we testing out and pin down one by one, breaking down or separate it, prove it, disprove it out of that. So now it is not 100% impossible, but it is not easy to do it. But the science perspective, we do observe things and giving out the hypothesis or theory out of it, predict it, and then testing out by experiment or by data. So social science perspective and economics perspective, we do more data testing instead of experimentation. Data testing, a little bit close to the experimentation is, natural experimentation, it is called. But we're going to see about that issue. So those process, experimentation, and then next is getting a final conclusion out of it. So prove out of the experiment or data and support by it and getting a conclusion out of it. And the model is very solid and decent and very robust. Then, what is the next? We want to forecast it. What can be the next in the future? This value changes how much impact on our economy. We can do it. But that's depending on the conclusion is very good, robust, right. That can be the first one. So scientific processes observed, raising a hypothesis and predict out of it, prediction, and getting out the experimentation. By doing so, getting a solid conclusion out of it. So this process is borrowed or employ the scientific method to the economist all the time. So under the targeting on human behavior. That's social science perspective, right? And even individual human behavior we can analyze. The next level of question is like that. The collection of human being is not like math. 1 plus 1 is not always 2 in the perspective of human collections. Human get together, community is built up, each individual human has such a preference, but as a group, the preference can be totally different out of it. So that is another very difficult thing to deal with. But yeah, one by one, we need to see. Difficult to conduct controlled experiments like those in chemistry or physics. So not the natural science experiment is not always easy to do with in human beings. So economics, social science perspective, it is really hard to do it. But yeah, as I told you, behavior economics is now in a fashion, and they do what inspired by the psychology, right? Individual decision-making process in the human brain, and making an experiment out of it, and then testing out very solid economic theory to test out, prove or disprove out of it. So alternative, approximate, controlled experiments with the random control trials, psychology-style lab experiments, and natural experiments. So data, using a data. So natural experiment idea is like this. One area have certain policy is decided, and very near neighborhood doesn't have that policy, right? One group and another group. Control group is naturally happening. By doing so, we can testing out that variable is controlled. So that is a natural experiment. We will discuss about this a little bit later. So this kind of difficulty we have right now, but yeah, we are doing or moving forward a little bit of more diverse or better method to deal with this. But as a science and a process and a way of thinking, or drawing a conclusion is nothing but scientific way of thinking. So yeah, economics itself is a science. That's why we are calling social science under the economics. A little bit discussion more about it, Yeah, social science, we are dealing with the human behavior. Under that perspective, yeah, economics is a social science. Our neighbors in the, branch of economics is a branch of social science. What else in the social science? What else topic? Anthropology, economics, political science, psychology, sociology. So yeah, I don't have any good understanding of all other topics or subject, but yeah, nowadays it is merged with all other topics. Psychology, yeah, inspired. The economics is inspired by the psychology. Under that, behavior economics is coming out. Lots of sociology theory is borrowed to certain, model in economics too. Political science, borrowing the lots of economic decision-making process. And one of the famous theory, game theory, is developed a lot. And once game theory is fashioned in economics, and that method is borrowed to the political science borrow that game theory a lot to analyzing their, subject too. So each one of the topic inspired each other and developed so far as time goes by. And all those human beings analysis, anthropology, sociology, psychology, political science, inspired by the economics inspired by them, like that, and develop. Yeah, one by one. But the common object of social science, we are trying to do some aspect of human behavior. We want to explain it. That's, common objective. But we're different. The topic is different in the question that we pose and what kind of analysis we are more on it. So the topic, the questions, the way of thinking is a little bit different. The interest, the preference of the solutions, basically the way of thinking, right? Economics perspective, we will learn sooner or later, market. So that market theory, market systems, market theory, those things are main idea of economists. So we try to analyze using those philosophy, the way of thinking. So in that way, among those social science, economics is a little bit different, and each one of the subjects they have each one of their small niche of expertise in general. So today I just introduced the first class of introduction to microeconomics. Well, some may already know about some of these topics or some of these knowledges. But one by one we learned, and we can sharpen your thinking skills, critical thinking skills, and building up your skepticism. That is next level of what you want to do. I hope you enjoy the first class, and let's move on. Have a nice week, and see you soon. Thank you.